Okay, so basically this week's chapters 1 and 2, if you looked at them, they're mostly a rehash of what we've already done. So next week should be a little more interesting when we do 3 and 4, so VLANs and inter VLAN routing. That's some meaty topics there. But yeah, this week is a bit of a rehash, but not a waste, because we've just done the testing last week, and so I can sort of go over areas where people made mistakes. All right, so basically I've got a bit of a topology here. We've got 192.168.50.0, and we've subnetted it into two subnets. So instead of it being /24, it's going to be 2/25 networks. And so 0 through to 127, of course, is the left network, and 128 through to 255 is the right network. Of course, they're staff and student. So I've got the addressing scheme up here. So as I said, the /25 here, .1 is the router, .2 is the switch, and this particular host is .10. On the other side, of course, it's 129 for the router, 130 for the switch, and 140 for the one host that we've got in there. And so first error that people did in the prac test was not everyone put gateways on their hosts. And so yeah, it's that's a bit of a problem. The hosts can't find their router and they can't route across networks, and so that was a fail. Not a happy outcome, but anyway. And so, of course, I've got the IP addressing here as per the map, with the subnet mask, of course, being /25. Okay, so for the config for the router, I'm going to do most of what was in the practical test anyway, which pretty much matches with what's in the chapters anyway. And so, of course, we're going to config mode. We're setting a host name. We're setting an IP domain name, or basically it's going to end up with a fully qualified domain name. We also create a local user account. Now, something I probably haven't shown you before is this command all-in-one. Packet Tracer never used to support it, so that's why I didn't actually demo it previously. So I've always done it sort of crypto key generate RSA and then interacted with the program to actually create the key. But now, with the newer version of Packet Tracer, it does seem to support the entire command, so that's nice. I can.
That's in the modules as well.
Yeah.
That command for the full line.
Yeah, it was in there because it did work on the routers on the hardware, but Packet Tracer it never actually worked until I don't know which version, but only a recent one. And so that's nice. Service password encryption, so we'll encrypt all the passwords in the config. Some people didn't put descriptions in their interfaces, even though it asked for it. IP address, of course, turn the interface on. Second interface, again with the IP address, and turn it on. Of course, enable secret password. On the practical test, it said Cisco 123, and not everyone did that. Some put class in there, some put God knows what, couldn't mark them. So, yeah, bit of a problem. Of course, a banner message of the day is always of use. So here, of course, it's more of the SSH setup. So I've still got the password command in there, even though it's a bit redundant. But login local and transport import SSH, of course, allows that to work.
It's redundant because you've set the details for user above.
And I've got login local instead of login.
So it's not going to use that password.
Yeah. But if someone changed it, it would still be there, usable. And then, of course, the line console has got the password and login. Someone actually did login local on the line console as well. That sort of threw me out because I was marking a ton, and yeah, suddenly I was typing in Cisco 123, it wasn't working because it was actually prompting me for a username. You know, RTFQ, read the frigging question. And so that's the config for the router. And so for the switches, I've sort of combined the two switches into one here. So as you can see, I've commented out one and using the other. So student switch is the first one we're doing on this side. No great rocket science here. Again, we're encrypting passwords. We've got alternate IP addresses for the staff switch and for the student switch. Not everyone put an IP default gateway in in the practical test. Now, I don't think it actually mentioned it as such, so it wasn't failable.
Can I just ask, when you got exclamation mark?
Yeah, that's a comment.
It's
It means it won't get rejected by the.
Yeah, just because I've got two switches and I only really wanted to do most of it once.
Yeah, I did that on test.
And so,
Communicate with the switches otherwise, right?
hmm?
You won't be able to communicate with the switches from outside that subnet otherwise.
Yeah. So when I do all my testing, I normally ping from just the one workstation. So the ones on the other subnet, of course, didn't respond because the switch didn't know who its router was. And so I'm going to say, as I said, it wasn't failable. Just something you.
My packet tracer crashed in my test.
That's always a joy. That's why it says save often.
Well, I had been, but I didn't. It was hard to figure out exactly where my last save was, like what I'd done.
Oh, okay.
All my configurations and see where I was up to. And so, fingers crossed, I got everything that I did.
Okay, again a banner, and then of course the passwords and the like. So that's pretty much it. So we'll get the config going on the host first, because that's the top of the file. Okay, next host. Yeah, I've got to admit, I did. Yeah, I do the mask first just because if I put the address in, it normally, uses the default mask, and that's just wasting my time. Okay, that's the host. If there was a way to script that, I'd love to be able to do that. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, of course, here's some beautiful scripting. Okay, so there's the crypto command. It actually specifies the FQDN and tells you about the modulus for the keys. And so SSH is enabled. And so away from here, the interfaces have all been configured. All the passwords and other such things have been configured as well. So that's working nicely. All right, first switch, which is student switch by the looks of it. Again, I don't see any errors. All relatively happy. Now I've got to edit this a little bit. Oh, I haven't done the host name yet, have I? I think that's all I need to do. Control V. I keep forgetting that it doesn't work everywhere. Okay, again, that seems to be pretty good. So let's have a ping first. Get everyone talking, see if they can. Ping. So that's the other host. ARP request probably waiting for here, but success. So the switch on the other subnet is 130. Switches are always a bit slower on the ARP, I think. But Should work. Waiting. There we go. And of course the router on the other subnet is 129. That works nice and quickly. The router on its subnet is this one. The switch is .2. Again, slow with ARP, I think. Oh no, not quite as bad. So that was all very successful. So, all right, we can have a look at the router. Of course, this show run to see that everything's working. Suppose we haven't tried out SSH yet. Might have a play with that as well. So all the configuration seems to have taken. Show IP route is always important. Now, one student actually put the wrong addressing in, and so they did all this subnetting, but they just blew it on one interface on the router, and of course that was enough for a fail as well. So
they failed the whole thing?
Yeah, they had because nothing pinged between subnets. So it actually put 192.168.1.1 instead of whichever unique number they'd been given. But everything else was addressed correctly. There was just that one interface on the router was wrong. Nothing can talk across the subnet.
Don't you have the discretion to give them a different mark?
It has to work.
Yeah, drop them some marks for that, but the rest is working, so you can put some marks.
Well, I think he got 45% or something like that. So he didn't get 0, but he got. It
has to work.
Yeah. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so that's when you do this show IP route. It should have hopefully stuck out to him saying, what's that subnet doing there? And that's my mistake. Can
you just clarify what exactly did they do?
Well, let's just say it was that he did the correct subnet on one interface, but on the other one it did 192.168.1.0 as a network. And so, but all the other devices on that network were the correct subnetting. And so the router on that network was belonging to a different network than all the other hosts did on that network. So that router could not talk to anyone else on that network. And so it didn't work. I'm flexible. If someone's done something right on a switch but failed it on the router, or on one switch but not the other, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. But that's the network is broken. Yeah, the ping didn't work. Nothing worked. Only the local subnets were able to talk to one another.
All your pinging works, then pretty good.
Yeah. And so so basically they should have done a bit of research. I'm gonna say I even wrote in the testing. This is how you test it, and must not have done it. So yeah. Anyway.
With those two pings before, when you ping the switches,
the
switch on the other subnet obviously took longer than the switch on this subnet. Right?
Yeah.
Is that because there's got to be two ARP processes run for the switch on
the router would have needed to send out an ARP request to this switch.
As well, right. So this one would have sent out an ARP request, not got a result, sent it to its default gateway.
No, this one would have had to send an ARP request finding out what the router's IP address was.
But how does it know? Oh, because of its subnet.
Okay. Yeah.
So it needs to find out the router's address, and then the router needs to find out the switching.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's possibly why that took two. Had two fails and the one on the.
Yeah. All right. So on the switches, of course we can do a show run. Nothing particularly exciting here. Host names and passwords is pretty much all we did on this. But of course, show MAC address table is where it all comes for the switch. So there's only the two hosts that have communicated. This would be the router, and this would be the host that's on the network. So they're the only things on the local network.
How do you get that?
Only because of the interface they're plugged into.
The ones on the router side.
Yeah. I didn't memorise the MAC addresses by heart, that's for sure. And so I suppose another thing we can look at is show ARP, as long as it hasn't timed out from all the talk. No, it's still there. And pretty much the only thing that isn't in this ARP table, because the router and the switch actually haven't directly spoken, and so the switch is the only thing that's missing on that.
They haven't spoken at the layer 3 of the week.
Yeah, they haven't. Yeah, they've only done layer 2 stuff. So so that's the only one that's missing out of the ARP table. Now, I suppose we should probably test the SSH. So I keep forgetting there's an SSH client these days. 192.168.50.1.
Can you do this with command line?
Yes, you can.
He doesn't remember the command.
Yeah, it's SSH minus L.
Yeah, minus L. I always forget the
And
minus L.
L looks like a 1.
Yeah.
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 This time.
And I did Cisco, I think. And so you can see the banner mod there showed up, and I'm in there. So in, of course. Yeah, it did.
Well, one's SSH.
Well, SSH, it actually asked the username on that previous screen. Because you normally do SSH
Device.
admin at and the device's address or name.
So yeah, so that's getting into the device, and then once you're in, you get the message of the day,
Sure.
and then you get the
Yeah.
command line.
So that's all working nicely as well. So, yeah, so I'm going to say the people who attempted SSH pretty much had no trouble that I've seen. I haven't marked everyone's yet, of course, but the ones that did attempt it have pretty much succeeded.
Yeah. No, I did the SSH thing. I've struggled with the telnet thing for some reason, so it should be okay. But, yeah, I don't know.
Well, if you've activated SSH in the way that I've shown you, Telnet actually would not work
Yeah. No,
because that stops Telnet working.
That's the thing, right? Like I
Yeah.
tried doing SSH and telnet at the same time.
Yeah.
But then
You could have done transport input all, and it would have allowed both.
Okay. I just did transport input SSH.
Yeah. So that's saying the only valid input protocol is SSH.
In practice, they should basically be mutually exclusive. They're not, but they should be.
You wouldn't normally
Once
try
you get
both.
SSH, if Telnet's enabled,
If you've activated SSH, why would you let people use Telnet?
exactly. But in practice, they're basically mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So in practice, if I've set up SSH, I shouldn't have that thing.
Yeah, Telnet shouldn't have worked, really. So
Yeah.
I know it said to get Telnet working in the past section, but if you've got SSH working, that's harder than getting Telnet working, so all good.
I'm pretty sure you asked for SSH to the router and Telnet to one of the switches.
Yeah.
I think you have both of those in.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's pretty much all I was going to demo today. So is anyone any other questions about what we, feedback on the test? I'm going to say I don't know if I've marked any of you guys at all.
Are you releasing like after you mark each person?
I've been scoring it. If you've passed, I will have put a score in the grade book under skills-based assessment equipment. There would be a score there
Is that on Cisco or on Fly?
on the Cisco site. Yeah. If you failed it, I still will have put a score on there, but I will have also sent back an email saying, here's where you went wrong.
So you did send an email. So if I haven't received an email, it's a good sign?
Yes, above.
Or it could, yeah. If you haven't received it, it either means you've passed or I haven't done it yet. They're the two options.
If we don't pass, is there like...
Yeah, you'll have another attempt.
Okay, no worries. But if we pass the theory test and not the practical, we don't have to do the...
You don't have to do both, no.
It's only one.